Make your turnarounds, your transitions mean something. Raise the stakes. So a lot of times you'll have a drop, right? So the break's happening here, okay? And this is usually how they'll play this transition. We go into the break, right? But we go into it in such a boring way. So usually this last bar or these last two bars I feel are very crucial. And this is where a lot of the professionals differentiate themselves from the intermediates and the amateurs. I'm not saying I'm a professional, by the way. I'm somewhere intermediate on my way to be a pro by the time I'm 60, but this transition means nothing. You don't risk it. You literally just fucking go into it and it's boring. So how can you risk it? Well, one, removing stuff would be the first thing. For example, how about we remove all the drums? Little better, but how about we remove the hook? Now that means something because one, drums are removed. So you're risking it, right? A lot of people don't like to remove their drums. For some reason, tech house producers get nervous to remove most of their drums. But the moment you remove stuff, the human brain will react towards that, right? Because it got used to hearing, okay, this is the song. The moment you remove drums, you gain the attention back. Second thing is removing hooks and stuff and switching it up, right, with something else, another idea, something that leads you into the break. It's also very, very crucial. So I would say look at your song. What are you introducing in that break you're going into? And maybe find something from there that you can use before to lead you into it in a professional way. Use the sounds you have already to help you transition into other elements or have them work into ideas. I'm going to show you guys an example. Now, let's say I have that and I'm going to be approaching this build up and then we're going to have the drop over here. So at the moment, if I leave it like most people do, this is how it's going to sound. Really boring, right? And this video is all about you not putting me to sleep. So what can we do? Well, at the moment, this bass is pretty much being shaped by this low pass filter. So if I grab the cutoff, I hit, let's say here, this guy configure, and I route it to the cutoff. Boom, as I go in, I can automate the cutoff to open up, revealing the bass. This is going to make the bass less punchy, but also provide some contrast from what's to come. Because if the bass stays punchy all the way in the build, and then it drops punchy, it kind of feels very boring. You know, you're not raising the stakes. A little better. I elongated the last note, so let's pitch it down so that it feels like it does something different. And this is, again, going to work for our scenario. It might not work for you, but you find your way of doing it. Hey, the technique is what matters. The execution, not so much there. It sounds like someone's farting. Let's put this down maybe more here at the bottom. Cool. Now let's add a washout as well. For this, I'm going to use he who must not be named washout, just the bass clef one. Nice. The version that I have on this song I worked on here. And it goes back into the drop. So here what I want to show you guys is how you can grab a sound. Look for things to move, knobs to move. And when you find the knobs to move, automate it. So grab your configure, click on it, wiggle the nipple a little, and then just automate it. Okay, that's the number one thing there. Something easy that you can do in order to sound more pro. So here's an example of an ARP, very similar to the bass example that I gave you guys, where the ARP's automating in order to turn into something a little bit more open, more lush, more swell by automating the release, the cutoff of it, and also the reverb amount to create a reverb swell that will help us transition a lot better. Drum accents. It's literally one of the best things that you can do to add more depth to your drums, okay? Insert fancy graphics. And what do I mean by accents? Well, so here's this drop without any drum accent. Sounds rather stockish, and what I mean by that, it just sounds kind of like normal, like, you know, like garage band-ish, not FL Studio-ish. It's not that bad, but you get the point there. So what is an accent? Well, an accent is when you grab another sound that's totally has a sonic, different timbre, sonic profile to the thing you're going to be accenting, aka layering up with. For example, this is going to layer up with the snare. And we're doing it here and there, not constantly, but we're doing it where we want to create a strong part of the beat, where we want to emphasize something. So now if I add this accent, you can see how something so simple adds a lot. Creates depth. There's more meaning to it, you know? They say don't judge a snare by the cover. Well, you know, don't, because there might be another goddamn accent layer that hits later on, right? So that's something easy to do. Second thing is also your open hats. If you're making this 1/8 shake-ass style of house music at the moment that everyone seems to be jumping on, then one thing you can do to establish some dominance and outdo everyone else is do what Chris Lake does, because this is where I got it from. And that is accent the open hats like so. You don't have to do it like I am, where it's right. You can do it in anywhere form, because every song's going to be different. You might accent claps, open hats, percussion, synths, and so forth. But accenting adds more depth to it. It's like if I'm singing right now, you are the best, and then on best producer of all time, we get like 3 versions of my voice playing at different octave ranges coming together. That is a form of accenting on the vocal, essentially emphasizing something to create more energy change, but also to make the person go, look at this, look at this. You know what I mean? Like, you get it. Call and response. Okay, I feel like you guys have heard this one a lot, so I'll just make it really quick. Call and response is literally just, in theory, in simplistic terms, don't have multiple sounds playing together at once, differing ideas. So for instance, if someone's trying to explain something to you on how the world is flat, and then someone else comes and starts explaining how the world is purple, then it's hard to pay attention to what each person is saying, because their words are trampling over each other, right? So in music, it's the same. When you have a melody and you have another melody, or you have multiple sounds trying to do something, trying to crave the attention of the person listening, then it makes it very hard for the listener, and it makes you sound amateurish. So how do you fix that? Well, you fix it with call and response, and literally, it's like a jigsaw puzzle. It's just making room for every little thing. We have a hooky melody. Okay. Now the melody dun, 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 right? There's that empty gap. So if I wanted to do call and response, I could choose to put something in that gap, which I did. And that's in essence call and response, right? The synths, instead of them playing over each other like this. So instead of having the synths play on top of each other, we can choose to make places for them. But the other thing too is the drum. Remember the open hat accents we were talking about in this clap accent? Same thing, if you're going to emphasize a beat, you probably wouldn't do it where you have a very busy melody going. So you might opt not to do it just because, again, there's going to be too much information being presented to the listener. And of course, as you remember, we were talking about drum accents. When you do drum accents, you can also use it to essentially layer up with a synth sound. For example, here the acid and that tom are going to play together to create more depth rather than just having one of them play. As long as the tom doesn't play some weird rhythm like this, where it takes attention away from the acid sound, but instead, if we do it like where they team up together to hit on that specific beat, then that's a lot better, right? We're doing accenting, and we're also doing a bit of call and response with the drums. Here's another example of call and response. Delays and reverb swells to bridge the sections. Use it's either an echo or a reverb, and you're going to use it to bridge. For example, I'm going to show you guys a good example of this. Here's the shot. And then we get this insane feedback of an echo that occurs after. Now this happens at a transitional moment in the song where we're going from the part 2 of the first drop into a bridge.
I can get acid by simply calling a friend, and I can get as much or as little as I want.
The thing I would do is I would probably use a ping pong effect or a stereo based delay where I increase one of these sections to create a wide delay rather than a mono one, because there's a vocal that's talking in the middle. So I'm going to choose to go either with that. From there, I'm going to choose to have 100% feedback on the sound. And I'm going to choose to automate that and the dry and wet as I execute this transition.
I can get acid by simply calling a friend, and I can get...
Okay, rather boring, but now we have the dry and wet up. Now let's get the feedback. 100%.
I can get acid by simply calling a friend, and I can get as much or as little as I want.
But notice how it's still there, so it's sloppy. So remember, I can use the dry and wet on this to control the volume. I also want to get the feedback and move it down eventually so that it's not self-oscillating in the background.
I can get acid by simply calling a friend, and I can get as much or as little as I want.
The idea again here is just using that to bridge that and sound more professional, right? When these you have sounds that create new sounds that help aid and transition, a lot of times you get what I would call cohesiveness in the song, which just means that the track feels unified, right? Everything sounds So using echo swells and reverb swells are very beneficial. For example, we can use that to bridge this. The sound that gets echoed into the bridge. This Evil Sounds drum fill here as well, I can echo that instead of echoing the Germany Ambulance. Atmosphere and texture. I feel it's one of those things that a lot of us miss, mainly because it's hard sometimes to add it in music because it might feel busy, especially if you're making like drum heavy music. It can be really hard to add texture an atmosphere. But what does this exactly mean? So I'm going to give you guys an example here. So here I have this section of the song where it has the vocal, which is the hook of the song, along with drums and the bass. Right, there's this echo down the center with the vocal, but other than that, there's really not a lot going on. So something like atmospheric for this vocal might be like looking at the theme of the vocal, right? Is the vocal sad? Is it dark? How is it being portrayed? And finding stuff that you can use with it. So a simple thing might be like pads that are playing something haunting to go with it. So that might be a form of atmosphere that you add that you can find a preset for, or a loop. For example, here's a reverb that is the vocal is being sent to, where there's this auto pan that is panning the reverb left and right to create width, but also to create movement. Gated reverbs. Now this one's cool, and it was heavily popularized by, I want to say, Above and Beyond, W&W, David Guetta with Future Rave stuff, and now hopefully by you as well. Now, in order to create the gated reverb effect, create a return channel. You're going to put your favorite reverb in there, and you're going to want to go really high decay time for this. This is the settings I have if you like what I have. But again, do it in your own way. Use your own preset, but definitely something with a good amount of decay time to produce a lot of reverb that's going to be holding on for dear life. We're going to need a sidechain. So for this, you can use the Ableton compressor. We can go click this arrow here. Source, you want to route it to the lead that will be producing this effect for us. And then from there, you're going to select pre-effects on it. And now the lead will be being brought into the compressor. And then with your threshold, you're going to pull down on it. And when that threshold is hit by the volume that is now being entered from the original lead, not the reverb, and it hits that threshold, the reverb will be reduced down in volume, aka being compressed down. And so that way, the reverb doesn't overtake the lead, and it creates this suck effect when the lead stops playing. At these settings, you can see that the reverb swell just gets really loud, really quick. So this is where you become a pro at this, because this is where the magic happens. The way you decide to program this. The attack is how fast the volume is reduced. So if you want there to be a lag, or you wanted to do it gradually, then you would go higher up, because the higher the attack, the longer it takes for the reduction of the reverb to occur after the lead has triggered it. From there, once the lead lets go, the release kicks in, and this is going to be how long it takes for the sound to come back. So a high release will make the sound slowly come back. It won't be as sudden and as instant. Versus a low release will make it really fast. Okay. Now, the reason this makes you sound pro is because it creates a lot of atmosphere and depth, as we've already talked about in this video. It creates texture in its own right, but when done properly, right, it just makes your track sound fucking huge. And this works really well for techno stuff. It works really well for anything where you can benefit from an effect like this. Since, you know, we are dealing with reverb, a lot of times reverb is very dynamic in nature. What that means is that it's not a brick wall. It's not like a pop and that's it. Reverb has a lot of depth, a lot of volume change that occurs. So one of the things we can do is also compress it to lower that down. In the form of compression here, the volume is reduced on the reverb as it increases and hits that threshold, which means that if I were talking to you at this moment, right, and there was no compressor, which I think there is on my voice, but let's say that there isn't, then when I go loud and then I go very quiet, right, there's a big dynamic change there. And with reverb, if we want this effect to always sound big and in our face, we can't really let it have that dynamic range. So that's where we use a compressor, so that when the reverb gets loud, we bring it down to the level of quietness. But then we can boost the volume up afterwards. So now quietness becomes loudness. And since we reduce the dynamic range, aka loud now sounds like quiet and quiet sounds like quiet, right, and we bring that up, then loud will sound like loud and loud will sound like loud, right? We can use a glue compressor where we set a pretty low attack, so it's instant, and then a high release so that it holds on and it doesn't decrease fast, because we want to, again, make the reverb sound loud always. Okay. And you can also add one afterwards if you find that you can't dial in your compressor settings right for the effect that you're trying to create. See, if I remove this, but now if I add it, it's a lot more controlled, right? Because at the end of the day, this is what I want you to think about compression the pro way, because this is something you learn with experience. Compression is all about control. By controlling the sound. If it gets too loud and you can't fucking manage it because it's just getting way too loud, and you level it down, but now it's way too quiet, then you compress in order so that when it gets loud, the volume is reduced, making the sound have a lower dynamic range, making it easier for you to level. It's all about control. From there, you can add an auto pan if you choose to, similar to the effect we did with the vocal in the previous example. Be unpredictable in the best ways possible. Now, what does being unpredictable mean? Well, just to give you guys an example, being unpredictable is all about doing something that the listeners don't expect you to do, but still fits in a pleasant way. For example, in this little remake I did here, because I'm working on Paradox 6, again, best techno sound sets out there. This respace, I would say, is very unpredictable because we don't really hear it anywhere else in the Space 92 and Maddox track, and then it comes in and leads us into a different section. You know, where it does... Got a bit of call and response going on, like we've talked about already, because you're going to fucking sound pro like this as well. And also this track, again, just to review, does the thing we talked about, which is the turnaround. Maddox, Space 92, they're fucking pros at what they do, right? And the reason for that is just the attention to detail. They follow all the things we have talked about and more, okay? Because they're at another level, I would say. Maybe not sound the same ways, but you know what I mean. I gotta feed my ego something, guys. But the key thing for me, you know, they set up 2 bars before we transition, right? The turnaround, where we're about to go into a different section, part 2 of the drop. They set up this 909 fill, and along with this unpredictable Reese to create something unpredictable in a pleasant way. Ambiance reverb. All right, I'm adding this as a bonus tip because right now, when we did this last example, I kind of forgot to teach this one. Dry tracks, I mean, they're fair, right? You definitely have your tracks dry, but I feel a lot of the songs people think are dry are not really dry. So for example, a question I get asked a lot when I get techno students is, how can I make my open hat sound like so-and-so's? And a lot of times so-and-so's open hat sounds like this. Yeah, like, how can I get that to the open hat? Like, I can never seem to get it. Well, what that is essentially drum reverb, or, you know, reverb that is room-based or ambience-based, which means they're a lot shorter and a lot more tighter. Okay, so for example, let's say that I use Ableton stock for this. In order to program the reverb I want, I would probably lower down the decay time, set a bit of pre-delay, let's say about 10 milliseconds. This makes it so that the reverb doesn't come in till later. And then from there, play with it a bit. Higher size will produce a reverb with more depth. It sounds like there's a lot more depth to it. It's more in the back. But if I lower down the size, I create more of a metallic, more of a plate-like reverb, which is more two-dimensional. That's that nice space that many people seek. Now, of course, a lot of people say you need Ableton, or all you need is Ableton to do cool stuff. I disagree. I think you can make cool stuff, good stuff with Ableton that definitely sounds good. But I think to get nicer sounding effects, you can't beat companies that have been doing it for way longer than Ableton's been around. So Eventide's SB 2016 Reverb, I've been playing with it. I really like it for this stuff. Again, I'm not sponsored or anything, but if you guys want to know what I'm using, this is what I'm using as a sound designer. Again, doing the packs for you guys, I do care about the sonic fidelity of stuff. And I do think third-party plugins do give you a better sound than the Ableton stock stuff. All right, guys, so my time here is done. If any of these techniques become aha moments for you, then you know what to do, guys. Just hit the like button, and you can leave a comment as well. Other than that, if you guys want to support the channel, you can head over to evilsounds.com, where you can find all of my sound design work. Most of the sounds that you heard in this video are coming from my sound banks and my sample packs that I have made for you guys for almost more than a decade, which is insane to say. But I thank you guys for your support as always, and you guys take care and keep killing it. And you're not going to put me to sleep anymore, hopefully. You got this, bros.